Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of the Indie Diaries podcast, that's showing the human stories behind indie game development. Speaking to you today, as usual, is your loyal Indie Diarist and host, Anthony L. Wolf, writer, narrative designer, and senior content manager in social media. And today's episode is very, very special because for this one and for a few episodes in the future, as soon as you know the timing is right and they become available, I will be partnering with Jacky Martin from the Gentleland to just highlight some of the amazing clients that she's been working with. So Ashley is the first one, and I hope you really enjoy this little episode, which is a bit shorter than usual, but not any less enjoyable in any case. So, before we go on, I want to shout out to my amazing patrons who are Feinoco, Zagini, Fishbum Dev, and Peleg. You guys are incredible, and I love having your support every single month. If you too want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/theindiediaries or go to theindiediaries.com to find all the relevant links to join the community. So, let's get into this episode, which is Indie Diary number 36 with Ashley Aemixx. Alright, hello everybody and welcome to a new episode of the show. And as I may have said during the intro, this one is a very special episode. Again, a lot of collaborations and partnerships I'm doing at the beginning of this year in Q1, as they would say, in agency environments. But this one is in collaboration with Gentleland.net, or more specifically, Jacky Martin, who's also a former guest of the show. If you don't know much about her, she's just an incredible marketer. Well, not a marketer. She said she pointed that out herself, but she's an incredible expert in indie games marketing and just bringing your project, your dream project, to other people. And if you don't know much about her, you can go to listen to the footnote number 3 on indie game marketing burning questions. But for this episode, we're speaking to Ashley. So Ashley, please tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, what you do, where you're based.
Yeah, so what I do is kind of a little bit of a long story. Originally, I got my degrees in aerospace engineering and theater. I have 2 bachelor's degrees, but that sort of led along a path of doing engineering to doing coding to doing development in Unreal Engine. And I've been working in Unreal Engine since the end of 2014 now. But it was just in the end of 2019 that I went to go sort of start my own studio and focus on my own project. And so since then, I've been working on this project, and I've still been doing sort of as a service Unreal Engine development as well. So I'm based in California. The team that I'm working with is all around the world. The main collaborator that I work with on my game that I'm developing right now is in Brazil. And then we have freelancers as well from everywhere joining us. So I think that answered most of your question, hopefully.
Right. Yeah, no, that's aerospace engineering you mentioned. Well, actually, that's a great coincidence because I've got episode, I believe, maybe 33, which was just the one before the one that went live this week, and the listeners won't know what week it is. But Jake, who is an aerospace engineer, actually, he's a lead developer in aerospace engineering. So yeah, interesting coincidence there. So yeah, it seems like a lot of aerospace engineers want to get into game dev at some point. There must be something there. So, well, I like to open these episodes with a little icebreaker just to make things a bit fun at the beginning. And my question to you would be, if you could be any game's character for a day, who would you be and why?
Well, I think that man, I like to put a lot more thought into these questions than I probably should. So I'll just go with what came to my mind first, which is Lara Croft.
Nice.
I started playing Tomb Raider in like 5th grade, and it was one of the few characters. It was one of the few games where you could play as a woman at the time, or that I was aware of anyway. There were definitely others, but at least on the console that I had. So yeah, I mean, she has a lot of resources. She's able to explore the world. She's very healthy and physically fit. Yeah.
Yeah, well, she became an icon pretty quickly, Lara. I remember at the time it was like everybody was talking about it, and even years later, she's still regarded as one of the first female heroines heroines, not female heroines, of course, heroines in video games. So yeah, definitely an icon. So it's a great pick. It's absolutely fine. Right. Well, then these episodes are about the people that come onto the show and about their stories. So I'd like to start from the beginning, in your case as well. And I want to start with a question about your childhood. Like, what is your earliest or fondest memory that involves video games?
Oh, well, the earliest would definitely be Sonic 2. That was the first game that I remember ever getting.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why that one stood out to me. I think that at that stage, I was just attracted to the idea of being able to interact with something that was on the screen. Um, so,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
yeah. And it just so happened that Sega Genesis was the console I ended up with as opposed to Nintendo. So there are a lot of games that I never got into just because, like, that was the console that I started out with, right? I didn't have
Mm-hmm.
Zelda as much, or Final Fantasy as much, but I had Sonic. So I
Mm-hmm.
just remember getting really attached to that franchise really early on. Um, I remember wanting to cosplay as Sonic in early elementary school and things like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, no, that's nice. Yeah, well, I mean, we all started somewhere. In my case, I started with the first PlayStation. That was my first console in the '90s, and then I just kind of started exploring more. But that means I missed a lot of Nintendo's history myself, like all of the early Zeldas, even from the '90s, all of the Mario's. I'm kind of catching up now, but of course, I've got like 20, 30
Yeah.
years of history to catch up on. It's not.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, yeah, it's going to take a long time. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, of course you mentioned Sonic, but were there other games that you remember playing growing up? And if so, do you think they're having an influence on the work that you're doing right now?
So my early game experiences were mostly platformers, and I think I didn't really
Hmm.
discover narrative games until quite early in my life as a gamer. Like, it was grad school when I discovered BioWare, and
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
Knights of the Old Republic came out long before I played it. I played it in like 2009. But once I played that, I was playing Dragon Age and Mass Effect, and I was just like, okay, this is much more the sort of game that I want to play, because I get to like
Nice.
actually be the character in a greater sense. I get to decide what they're saying and what they're doing, and it affects the story. So that was much more exciting. I think that I may have discovered sort of visual novels somewhat indirectly. Much earlier on, there was a visual novel called Hylian, which I don't know if you've heard of, but it was one of those sort of it was a game that I was just like, okay, well, what sort of game is this, right? Because it's not a game that I could play on any console that I had. It's not a sort of game that I had heard of, and at the time, like, mobile gaming was not as much of a thing yet. So it was just like, okay, so this is a narrative game, and it's a really interesting concept, but I've never seen a game like this before, and I have no idea where to find more of them. So, and it was a Western visual novel too, which is kind of crazy because I didn't find out, or wild, I should say, but it's because there's so many visual novels in Japan. And my early visual novel experiences were not with the classic visual novels like Fate Stay Night and Higurashi When They Cry and Steins Gate and all of those ones. It was with this, at least from my perspective, somewhat random Western game online. And then I discovered all those things later. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I definitely remember my first impact with narrative games and such. So it's there was one moment I realized that maybe at one point I would have liked to write a game, which was after I played To the Moon, and I realized the story in that game is so beautiful. And around the same time, I played also The Walking Dead season 1, and I won't spoil it for anybody who hasn't played it, but like there's the final twist or the final choice that they force you to make is just heart wrenching, and so I was completely destroyed while I was playing that one, and it showed me that like there is a lot of power in creating stories for games. So I know exactly what you mean there, and I can see the appeal of those games myself. And when exactly did you realize that you wanted to make those games? Like, do you remember there was a specific moment, maybe some sort of epiphany or something like that?
Well, making games has always sort of been mixed together with making other sorts of fiction for me, right? I do have that theater degree, so I
Mm-hmm.
was writing plays and I was directing them. I wasn't acting so much, And so I was always wanting to be a storyteller in some sense, in addition to the fact that I had a technical degree. So games bring that stuff together in a really straightforward way. But even with our current project, my creative partner and I were originally planning to make just a collaborative novel. But because our background is in tabletop gaming, like Dungeons and Dragons and running games for people, we like to think about all the different possibilities that could happen in the story. And so being able to let people make choices, it feels more immersive for us as players. And so we ended up turning it into a narrative game instead. So it was, I don't know if it was like a decision in my life where it's like, oh, I want to make games. I've always wanted to make fiction. And then for this particular project, it was one type of fiction, and now it's this type of fiction, which we think is a better fit and we can do a lot more with it.
Right. Yeah. Well, and about your current project, actually, while we're on it, it's called Gods of Twilight, isn't it? So yeah, just tell the listeners a bit about the Gods of Twilight in general, like what inspired it, what's so special about it, because it sounds like there's a little story there, like you kind of maybe changed direction if you switched direction a few times.
Well, what the change was that, I mean, originally when we were thinking of making it a collaborative novel, it was originally going to be more of a medieval fantasy, Norse-inspired sort of story. But then we were thinking that the events that were happening in the medieval period of time were actually going to leave things somewhat unresolved, and things were going to come back later. So what we're doing in the game is that you start out in the near future, like maybe 100 years from now, and the characters gradually realize that they had this medieval life. They start to remember what happened back then and all of the sort of unresolved things that are coming back now, and they're facing that. And that's why, we describe it as it's a cyberpunk game where magic is emerging in the world, and you're sort of discovering, what that's all about, who you actually are, and what to do about it. So yeah, so the medieval story is sort of still there. It's just that it's being sort of discovered as you go through the more modern story.
Perfect. Yeah, and what do you think is? You mentioned your creative partner, so you're like working. Is it a duo? Do you have like more people helping you out with bringing this to life?
Well, yeah, we have I think now 21 voice actors and 7 other freelancers who work with us.
Oh, crap. Okay.
But the two of us are sort of the core team in the sense that the freelancers sort of come and go as we have work for them, depending on what part of the project we're working on. So like with just one project of this scale, we don't have enough work to give someone to be with us full time. So that's the way that we do it. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. And of course, I mean, you clearly have an interest in narrative-driven stories and such. What do you think is your vision for Gods of Twilight? What's one thing that you wish every player playing it got from it?
Oh, well, those are perhaps a couple of different questions. When you first asked what's my dream for it, I was thinking, well, I want to see it on Netflix. I want to see it on Amazon Prime as a fully animated, interactive anime where people can, have a choose your own adventure anime for like a whole season, like not just a single movie like Bandersnatch. But in terms of what people get from it, I mean, I like, it's a story about the characters sort of discovering their own potential, reconnecting with who they truly are in a powerful way. And I think that as these characters realize their divinity, so to speak, and their power over, their own lives, that perhaps people can feel more empowered in the real world as well, and realize that, maybe they're a lot more than they realize too.
All right. Yeah, no, that's a really powerful message to send, actually. Yeah. It makes me think that maybe it's there's also something there about, because, whenever I play a game like, say, Outer Wilds, and I'm looking over there because I've got a poster of Outer Wilds because I love that game. But whenever I play a game like that, it really resonates with me because of all the theme of failure and picking yourself up and all of that. So I'm sure a lot of people will see that kind of message. They will see it come across when they play Gods of Twilight, because it sounds like it's if you described it that way, it sounds like it's a really important part of the narrative and just in general of the game experience. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it will come across. Okay, well then, I'm thinking. So you've obviously gone through early access and you're still working on the game right now, but so far, has there been like some sort of development challenge that has left a mark on you? So something, maybe a big learning that you may want to share with other developers?
Well, I mean,
that you're comfortable talking about, of course.
Yeah, I think that well, there are several different things that come to mind. One of them is that I'm just a relatively shy and self-conscious person, and despite the fact that I really love making fiction and telling stories, I think a lot of artists will relate to the idea that showing people your work is really scary. And especially when you are in the early stages of building a social media presence or an online presence in general, and things are not seen by a lot of people by default until you start to build more of a following. And then, the nervousness within your mind is like, oh, does that mean that like my project is inherently terrible or something like that? And logically that that's not true. And then it's just like, well, you're at the beginning, and of course the algorithm doesn't know yet who to show this to and so forth. But so being intimidated by feedback is a hurdle to get over, even though feedback is the most valuable thing. And we've gotten a lot of really valuable feedback. We were fortunate enough to have people who were willing to play through the game and give us really thoughtful, detailed feedback. And that's what improved it so much. We were able to revamp so many things and add so many like interesting layers that, as a result of the feedback we got. And I think that, for any creative project, that is really the key to success, is finding quality feedback and listening to it. Not just not just unthinkingly following it, but being able to take it in and sort of understand what everyone is thinking.
And also thinking that it's not personal, is it? Because I mean, sometimes it is, but that's when it's like crap feedback.
Well,
but when it is actually constructive feedback, as you say, like take it in, see if there's anything that applies to the kind of vision that you have for the project, and don't take it personally. And as a writer, I know it myself. It hurts when people don't like what you do. It hurts when you have harsh feedback, or when you have people saying, "Oh yeah, I didn't really get that." And then you start second guessing yourself and questioning everything that you do, the imposter syndrome and whatnot. So,
and if you're the logical side of your brain when that happens might just be like, well, if they didn't get it, does that mean that there's a way that I can make it more clear, or is it just because they're not my target audience? And you have to make those decisions. But then it's like, oh, is it just not good? Am I not good? Like those thoughts happen too. But yeah, it's all feedback is either useful or not relevant. So if you like, as much as I tell myself that, emotions still happen, but that is true.
Yeah, I see exactly what you mean. Which brings me closer to the question that I love asking everybody on the show. But before we get to that, I'm curious about this other thing. What would you say, and it might be related to what you just said about feedback. What would you say is your biggest struggle as an independent developer, and how do you cope with that?
Oh, I think a lot of indie developers are challenged by marketing, because what they want to do is make the game. They don't want to have to be posting on social media all the time. They don't want to have to be, figuring out all the things that people have figured out who went to school for marketing, or who make that their entire career. Like it's just not necessarily what you enjoy. I think about a lot of novelists from back in the day who would just, well, either they have another job, but the novelist would typically like hide themselves away in their room or in their cabin when they're working, and just like go for like months or years, and they have some editor who's poking them to like engage with them and update them. But it's just like, imagine those people being forced to post on Twitter every day. Like, it's just so I have to like, give myself a little bit of a break and be like, okay, like, maybe this isn't something that comes easy for me, but at least at this stage, I'm the one doing it. When you expand your team and there are people who really understand the spirit of the project and you can hire them to do that for you, then that works. And we may be, looking into that too. But I think that that's a challenge.
Well, I remember just before the marketing episode that I did with Jacky Martin and Alex Harding, I ran a poll on my Twitter profile asking what the biggest struggle for indie developers was between marketing, funding, and other things. I think an overwhelming 56% of people said that it was marketing. So that made me think, okay, there's actually something that we need to talk about here. as a social media manager, I know that marketing is a struggle, and if you don't understand it, it can seem very complicated. A lot of people just don't feel like it's their thing, as you say. It can be difficult, and yeah, I totally get what you mean. It's just putting yourself out there, and especially as a shy or introvert or just a very self-conscious person, I suppose that's not going to be that's not your favorite thing to do on any given day.
Yeah. I tend to overthink every post. I'm like,
There you go,
is this going to be not quite right? How's this going to go over? Am I accidentally phrasing things in a way that's going to bother somebody? And then I put like an hour into one tweet, and I'm like, I need to schedule a month of these.
Yeah, it tends to happen a lot. Yeah, I totally agree. Well, then I guess we're at the core. We're now reached the core of the episode, which is me asking you something that I really care about. Why are you a game developer? What is it that drives you forward?
Well, with any type of art, I want to connect with other people in a meaningful way. Art is a form of communication. I want to have meaningful interactions with people. And I hope that when people see the game, they might want to talk to us. We have a Discord for that reason. I want to build a community. I want people to find the people who are interested in discussing, interesting and meaningful things. We explore a lot of different themes in the game, from human relationships to technology and its impact on people. And I think that those are important things to talk about. I think that there's a lot of things that we can learn from each other, and that we can sort of figure out about ourselves and what we want as individuals and as a world. So yeah, I just want to start some of those conversations so that we can all figure things out and get to know each other better.
And that's very noble, and it's something that I love to hear. Definitely a great answer to this question. And well, I guess we're near the end now, so I have just a couple more questions for you, but there is one that's been buzzing in my mind, just making me think for the past 20 or so minutes, which is, having worked on this game and having had experience in game development and all the marketing things that you mentioned as well, if you could change one thing about the industry, what would it be?
There are a couple of things that come to mind, and I'm trying to decide which one. I mean, obviously, like, there have been
well, I said one thing.
Yeah,
could be two.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so I'm actually not going to go for all of the culture issues with big studios, because I've not, although that is a serious issue, perhaps I'm not the person to talk about it, because it's not something I personally experienced. What I have experienced is being a small new developer, and there are a lot of decent resources, including free and accessible ones for new developers, like communities of developers that come together and help introduce you. So I think that that's a wonderful thing. The training that's available through that, I think, is one of the most valuable things. But if we're going to change something, I think that, I would just like it to be easier for people to find their people. And I don't know how that works exactly. I think that maybe it's a question of how the algorithms are designed. I know that TikTok has a reputation for having an algorithm that is able to more efficiently find people who will respond to your content. Maybe if more platforms were able to do that efficiently, then people who are new developers would have an easier time finding their target market. Because, some people are already part of large communities that are their target market, but other people are just like, well, there's me, there's the friends I play D&D with, and how am I going to find thousands of people who are like that? I don't know. Yeah.
I think you have an important point there, and having working with TikTok every day, I can absolutely confirm what you say. Like, TikTok's algorithm is like black magic. I have no idea how it does it, but like, there are those people who get a lot of entertainment on it. I get a lot of history and science related TikToks. I get my gaming elsewhere, maybe on YouTube, but like, my feed is really tailored to the things that will hook me there. TikTok somehow knows that I love knowledge and learning new things, and so it's just feeding me those kinds of things constantly. I have no idea how it does it, but it does it very efficiently. If every platform worked like that, Steam included, of course, then it would definitely be easier for people to find things that make you tick.
If you can combine an algorithm like that with a privacy agreement that actually like protects your content from, for example, a lot of voice actors and artists are really concerned about their material being used for AI without their consent. And
Yep.
if we have voice actors and artists in all of our content in our game, and we post it on a certain platform that has a privacy agreement that might say something like, posting here gives us the license to do anything with your content, including creating machine replications or however they phrase it. It's like, well, I can't post it there then, because I have to protect the rights of our artists and our voice actors, and I don't necessarily have their consent to give that away. So we need to combine those things somehow, the privacy policy and the algorithm that helps find the right people.
Yeah, and I think we're working it out, because with AI, especially these days, like, everybody's trying to regulate this beast that it's becoming. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, so to wrap up, I've got two questions which I hope will be a bit fun for you. But first one is just to make you reflect on your journey so far. Imagine writing a letter to yourself, but right before you started working on Gods of Twilight. What would you say?
Well, I actually did that. So I actually.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, no, I wrote a letter to myself in 2020 when I was starting this work.
Right. Okay.
It was part of some, like, I forget what. I don't know. I was doing some sort of online training, and as part of it, that was one of the exercises. But yeah, it was something like it was strange, because when I've written letters to myself in the past, sometimes there are things that surprise you. But this one, like, it was remarkably the same. It's like a lot has really not changed in terms of what I'm trying to do and what my why it's important to me and everything like that. So
30 plus episodes, and you're the first person who said, I actually wrote a letter to myself. So that's a first.
Yeah. But it's basically like, I hope that you're not letting the world intimidate you, and that you're still going on the things that you truly love, and connecting with people who you're connecting with people and having meaningful relationships with them, which is something that I was just saying as well. So it's all very consistent this time.
Nice. Well, then you had the answer prepared, even though you didn't know that. That's interesting and fun. So and lastly, if you had unlimited budget and time, what game do you think you would make?
I'd be the same game. It would just be really high production value. It would be, it would be the interactive anime. Yeah, basically, like, because I think that there are a lot of people out there who don't understand that they might like visual novels. They think it's not their type of game, but they don't realize that it doesn't even necessarily need to be a game in their mind, because they might still like anime, they might still like comic books, they might still like webtoons or something else. And if it has the bonus of choice, then that's a positive, not, oh, it doesn't have fighting, or in some form that I'm used to seeing in games. It does have fighting. There is a lot of fighting in the plot. It's just not that you're running around in 3D and swinging something. So yeah, I mean, like, I think right now that is the story that my head is full of, and so it would just come out in a much bigger and shinier way.
Yeah, well, there are usually two answers to this question. One is, I would do the same thing I'm doing now, but bigger, and the other is, I would do an MMO. So I think, and I always like the former, because I feel like people are on the right track when they say that. So yeah.
Yeah, the idea of an MMO is interesting because you can have communities in there and you can interact with people. But I don't really have a particular concept for an MMO that doesn't already exist at the moment. So.
So yeah, well, we'll stick with what we already doing. That's great. Well, okay, Ashley, I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And yes, it sounds like you're on the right track with Gods of Twilight. Hope it gets out of early access soon, because it sounds like you have a nice story in your head, and it's going to help a lot of people relate and connect.
Well, it's going to be in there for as long as we're releasing new episodes or new chapters.
Yeah.
So it's probably going to be about 2 years. But,
there you go.
You've got 10 hours or so of gameplay already, and then we're going to add a bunch more this year. So hopefully it's a good amount.
Yeah. Hopefully it helps you build a little community around the story and everything. So yeah, over time, those episodes will just find more and more people. So yeah, as a last thing for me, where can other people find you, or Gods of Twilight, of course, and if they do, what's the best way to support you?
Well, I mean, I generally direct people to the Steam page because that's the easiest thing. You can find everything else on there. I mean, you open up the game and right on the main menu, you can find our Twitter account and our Discord. And so, yeah, you can find us from there, basically from Steam.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Amazing. And of course, I will find those links and put them in the description of the episode, so people can check you out if they want to. But of course, do go and try out and get to Gods of Twilight, because of course it's going to be an amazing story based on everything we said today. Yes, well, what can I say, Ashley? Thank you again. Thank you so much for coming into the show. It's been a pleasure hosting you. And yeah, wish you all the best with Gods of Twilight.
All right, thanks for having me.
And that, my friends, is a wrap on another beautiful episode of the Indie Diaries podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to Ashley, who's been such an amazing guest. It's been lovely speaking about Gods of Twilight and narrative and just all of those things that we mentioned with you, and especially connecting with other human beings. I wish you all the best with your project, and I'm sure other people will see its value just as much as you do. So if you guys enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show if you aren't already, and yes, leave a rating, because that always helps. 5 stars, 4 stars, whatever you want. Maybe not 2 stars, that wouldn't help, but but if you want to leave a generous rating, then I would be absolutely super thankful and grateful. You can also find the Indie Diaries on all the major social media platforms and other podcasting platforms, and also on YouTube, which I launched at the beginning of January. And I've already started putting some shorts over there, so you can actually see some clips. You can see some clips from the different episodes and such. So please go and find the Indie Diaries on YouTube. Give it a follow, because there's more video content coming, and it will be fun. Well, I hope so. It will definitely be fun for me. I hope it will be for you. For anything else, you can join the Discord by going to theindiediaries.com, or you can just support the show in any way by following on social media or going on patreon.com/theindiediarist. If you are an indie game developer yourself, please get in touch, because I would love to hear from you from one of my future Indie Diaries. I'll speak to you next time.